Who was that against? Italy?
Yeah, Fabio Grosso.
That's right.
Was it a dive? Was it not a dive? Look, it was a dive.
Of course it was a dive. Hello and welcome to part 2 of Yahoo Footballing Weekly. With me as always, Yahoo columnist Neil Humphreys.
And me, Yahoo editor Chia Keong. And we have our Yahoo colleague, Matt here.
Thank you very much for having me again.
Now he has an Australian jersey.
Different topic, different jersey. Yeah. How long have you been following the Socceroos? I mean, since childhood or?
So one of my earliest Socceroos memories is also one of the most painful, which was the qualification for the 1998 World Cup.
I remember that, yeah.
Where we played, it was in 1997, a knockout qualifier against Iran.
Yep.
We needed a win at home to make it to the World Cup. And we were leading 2-1 or 2-0 for a large period of time. And this is where a young Harry Kuehl scored a goal. I remember his iconic celebration on the corner post. Mark Bosnich was our goalkeeper. And, absolute disaster struck late in the game. Iran equalized to be 2-2 and we failed to qualify for that. And, that was one of my earliest Socceroos memories, but also one of the most painful. But there's been lots of good memories since then, which is great.
One of my earliest painful Socceroos memories was, of course, Lucas Neal. Was it 2006, the penalty?
Yeah, that's very much up there in the realm of painful memories.
Was he at West Ham then? I think he joined West Ham after.
That was before. He was at Blackburn.
But that was the big one that stands out in my mind, the penalty. Who was that against? Italy?
Yeah, Fabio Grosso.
That's right.
Was it a dive? Was it not a dive? Look, it was a dive.
Of course it was a dive. It was a dive.
That was a fantastic World Cup. And talk about the golden generation of Socceroos. They were, out in force at that World Cup. That was an amazing one.
Great. So that's what we're talking about today. Global football, Asian football, Singapore football. And of course, thanks to you, this podcast is nominated for a Global Football Podcast Award.
That's right. For the Global Sports Podcast Award, we've been nominated for the Diverse Voices category.
Cheers.
So, thanks to you, we've been always wanting voices, comments from you, and that's why I think they've probably recognized us for being able to incorporate all these different voices and different topics: Asian football, global football, English football, Australian football, and all into our little podcast.
Yeah, we don't do the Australian football that much. Just once in a while when Matt comes on.
Just once every few months. It's more than enough.
Just to keep it happy.
That's diverse enough.
Yeah, we just want to win the award.
So, the results I think will be out in February, but in the next 2 weeks they'll be still open for the public to vote for the podcast. So the website is here. If you want to go to the website and vote for us.
What do you mean if you want to?
You better vote for us.
Do it. Do your uncle. You're better when you do your stern uncle. Face down the camera. That's it. Do what the uncle says.
Yeah.
But seriously, it's because of you, apart from that we had to hive off this podcast into 2 parts because we just got so many comments about local football, Asian football. And this week is no exception. Void Deck Football is back again.
Yeah, once in a while, like once every few years, this issue comes up in Singapore. And last week we talked a lot at length about why we feel that letting people play in the void decks or at even the street soccer courts, which is where you should be playing, but somehow it's some town councils have stopped people from playing.
Correct.
Why is it important for the youths to build some improvisational skills and this and that? And they gather a lot of comments. I think I saw about 40 over comments in the YouTube thing. So let's start with somebody who disagrees with us.
We like that. I like that. Yeah. Just to put it out there. I do like it.
No problem. Yeah. Go Cards SSG350, regular commenter. He says, this issue of playing or not playing at the void deck is overblown. Common sense needs to prevail. Playing football has no place on common communal spaces such as void decks. It's not only the noise, but the potential hazard of hitting someone or public property with a stray football. It's easy to take on the side of void deck players when it's not in your own backyard. If Singapore wants to level up in the 11-a-side game, we need to get kids to play on pitches on regular basis. This means our podcast has brought up in previous episodes an untapped source of playing space, which is school fields. And now that most school fields are laid out in AstroTurf, surely they can be utilised to the fullest, besides being open only on school days and on weekends for Sunday League warriors. Most schools also have indoor sports hall. Surely they can double as futsal courts for kids on designated non-schooling hours. Why cast the spotlight on void decks?
Yeah, that's a good point. I know there's a follow-up, but before we get into that, I just want to address that first and then get Matt in for his take on how it is in Australia. So this discussion we had about void deck football, there is a misconception, right? And I think a bit of a myth that we do need to clear up, which is this idea that void deck football is somehow okay. It actually isn't. Let me finish. We don't disagree that it's wrong, right? And this idea that it's wrong here but right everywhere else is also not true. I grew up in England where there were no balls games allowed signs everywhere, right? Everywhere. You weren't allowed to play in England on void deck type places either. And Australia too also has areas that say no ball games allowed and so on. This is the difference. In England, we still played on them and we still got kicked off and people were also intolerant. The difference was we were being lazy because there were available playing spaces elsewhere. Just on that particular day, we couldn't be bothered. Here, there isn't. That's problem number one. Problem number two for Singapore is optics. What we were really talking about, or at least I was optics. What does this make us look like as a nation? It makes us look like we're intolerant of kids just playing freely outdoors. So it's not about the void deck per se. Can you not? No, you can't. But elsewhere, kids have other places they can play. Number one, Singaporean kids don't. Number two, it's optics. Do we want our kids to play or not? And it looks like we don't. That was the issue I had. What about you, Matt?
I just want to pick up on one thing that the commenter said. I am a Sunday League warrior, as the comment refers to. Saturday, actually. Big shout out to Hibernians FC. And
you play for a Scottish name team.
Yeah, well, there's it's a very diverse set of people.
Right.
And we've been very negatively impacted by the closure of Turf City, which I know is a topic that you guys have spoken about on the podcast in recent times. And the commenter makes reference to, let's just use school facilities. Well, let me tell you, that it is a extremely competitive scene at the moment to secure school facilities. And our entire league, you're talking about tens of thousands of people that used to call Turf City home are now trying to do exactly that same thing, which is use school facilities. And a lot of the schools are not open for it at the moment. They should be because it's good for their youth. And it's great I believe it's great for a country to have a really strong sporting culture. Obviously, I believe that because I'm from Australia, where we have one. But there's a growing crisis in Singapore right now of the ability for whether it be Singaporean youngsters or people participating in Saturday or Sunday leagues to find a space to play, and there definitely needs to be a solution found for that. So that's on one side of it. On the Australian side, we're so blessed to have such a big country with so many open spaces. We have big backyards. So you go to your mates, you have a kick around in the backyard, you got a park down the road, you've always got a soccer field nearby where you can go and have a kick, you got a cricket pitch. There's no issues with it.
You have alternatives.
We have lots of alternatives. If you look at South America, if you look at anywhere where football is absolutely native to the culture of the place, they don't care. They'll kick a coconut around in a car park for 4 hours and call it football and become Ronaldinho. So, it comes down to how much is the country going to prioritize it? How much are they going to make spaces available? And how much of it is, is the culture reliant on making this happen?
You're the Singaporean. What's your take?
No, I mean, I'm more concerned about the tolerance issue. It's increasingly people are antsy about, people play. Why are you so worked up about people playing on a void deck, football pitch? It's a football. You might damage a bit of property. You're rich enough. Come, but I think the increasingly people are angsty about noisy places. People making too much noise in all around the housing estates. People playing football, and I think that intolerance is a worrying trend for me. And I think the more intolerant we are, then a lot of things are difficult for things to happen in Singapore.
Yeah, which leads us on to the follow-up comment, because we had a good one there, didn't we, Keong, where someone disagrees with that idea. It's not so simple just to go somewhere else.
That is right. So at Confederal said that, how do you get kids to use their pocket money to pay for a dedicated pitch?
Exactly.
and also the organization and logistics that come along with doing it. On the void deck or on the street soccer court, they could just take a ball and bring themselves there. A serious athlete needs at least 100 hours weekly to be good. We are depriving it by being intolerant, as I said.
Yep.
Could understand if no football allowed at void decks, but for street soccer courts or empty fields, those are the ones that I find strange.
Yep.
It's in the communal space that kids hone tangible football techniques at their own time, like agility, communication, shooting, first touch, anticipation. Big spaces are where they can hone passing, movement, crossing, stamina, etc. No one gets good without playing football after their training ends. Academies can only do so much. This is absolutely
Great comment.
Perfect.
Great
Could not agree more. Confederal, thank you so much. That's a great comment because it ties in perfectly and poignantly with everything you just said, which is if Matt and his very rich Hibernian's football team players can't necessarily find another venue so easily, how do you expect a couple of kids from an HDB flat just to find the money and the time and the space to put together $100 or whatever it is to go have a kick around? Money cannot be the answer to everything in Singapore, right? The broader point is this. Yes, Active SG do a fantastic job. They do with subsidized football academies for the less, affluent in Singapore. If I was a kid growing up in England, I would have loved something like Active SG. It's brilliant. No one's denying that. But what we must not forget is elite footballers all began their journey on streets and beaches and backyards first in any country. Lionel Messi played first in the streets, then he got picked up by the academy. Wayne Rooney played on a council estate in Liverpool, then gets picked up by the academy. Ronaldo was dirt poor, Cristiano Ronaldo in Madeira, and also Maradona. Does his basic street skills first, then gets picked up by the academies. Kids are being denied that first step on their football journey in Singapore, and that's the difference.
And I mean, a great point is that it's the street soccer courts that they are being closed.
Yeah,
and that's really too much. I mean if you say it's the void decks that the players are being thrown out of, maybe there's a point there.
Yeah,
but it's a street soccer is exactly where they should be given a place to play.
I would actually even take it back further one step and say that is where kids are going to discover their passion for the game.
Absolutely.
It's watching the other kids down there kicking a ball around and going, I want to be a part of that.
People watching from the
that looks fun. Yeah. I make mates doing that. Like I get good. Maybe I'm good at this, but I don't know.
Great point.
That's where spontaneity and these informal football get-togethers need to happen. It can't be, I'm going to rent a pitch at 6 p.m. and let's all go.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a part of it. But the other is that spontaneous enjoyment and love of the game that's going to come from that organic way of discovering and playing football and practicing those football skills.
It's a great point. And it's a great point because it happens to me. I still try to join in. And I go past these kids playing at this street soccer pitch at Senko.
And have a look.
And I start going, my wife's like, you're nearly 50, for God's sake.
We do have an over 45s team, mate.
But these are kids. You can't play with kids anymore. You'll get arrested.
Yeah.
But no, I completely agree with that. If it affects me at nearly 50, what about
Not
some
the
kid?
youngsters,
Yeah,
right.
of course. Great comment. Great comment. All right. But of course, it's about our priorities, isn't it?
This
Which
one when
ties it up nicely.
When I saw this comment, I just couldn't. It sparked off something inside me. So Hiroyuki Shinchi 9873 says, "No choice. It is about priorities. Our football under 17 boys can't match the standards of our under 17 ASEAN, Japan, Europe boys. But our under 17 beat every other country in the world in maths, science, reading, etc. That we are world class. Most Singaporeans will always choose the latter. Academics will always reign supreme, and that's what the country needs most."
Okay, you can answer that one.
Yeah. I something off my chest.
This is the Singaporean uncle's turn.
Yes. So I feel that this is a thought that is so 1970s, 1980s, when our country is still young. We are still trying to build a good living for a high standard of living for the country. So all of us are concerned about academics and and our economy. So we are driven, we are focused on that, and that's all we aim for. And we excel. Thankfully, we excel in that, and then it got us to where we are right now. But now, almost 60 years into our nation building, it's time for us to think about other things that could enrich us, like arts, or like football, or like sports. I mean, these aren't the things that you say, we are not good right now, so we should forget about it. No, we should think about it. We should do it. And who knows, somebody maybe among us may be excellent at it, and you can unearth your sporting heroes from there. You can't say that, because we're not good at it, forget about it. So don't care. Void deck, street soccer courts, just close them as you wish. You build them so that you can read something in it. And this I think is a very outdated kind of thinking that we shouldn't have.
The ultra modern way of thinking is to consider sport as a pillar of the economy and a pillar of your diplomatic relations with the rest of the world. Football is a way for politics and politicians to expand, to connect with other countries. Sport diplomacy is well known. So perhaps this is part of the next 60 years of Singapore.
That's how
Singapore
the nation
is a
should.
wonderful, wonderful country. But what it doesn't have is that rich sporting culture that I think is just, could be worked on. And don't separate it from science, maths, STEM as being economic drivers. Sport is an economic driver.
Absolutely.
And having talent in sport is a driver of power and wealth for the country. But look at it that way.
Beautiful, beautiful points from both of you, really. And nothing to add except I never thought we'd go down this geopolitical line, but there is a debate going on now in the UK, which is very valid to this, which is Britain is not a global economic superpower anymore, right? It isn't. It isn't. I mean, it's in the top, but it's declining. The point is, moving forward geopolitically, they're talking about this idea. They position themselves as a soft cultural power through things like music and the arts and literature, which UK and Ireland way punch above their weight, right? That is something that Singapore could do as well. That ties in with both your points, whether it's arts or sports or whatever, you can decide. But yes, a small nation like Singapore, I completely agree with both of you. We're never going to challenge China or US or whatever. But in other subtle ways, we can. Great points. Great points. What do you guys think? Send all your comments too.
Yahoo Southeast Asia on YouTube, Yahoo SG, Yahoo_MY on Twitter, Yahoo SEA on TikTok.
All right, here we go. Asian Cup going on now in Doha. His mob Socceroos kicked off this week with a victory. What did you
2-0
think?
against India.
2-0 against India. Look, honestly, the match did fall below the expectations I think we had for our team. We do tend to start slow in these tournaments. I believe in 2015 when we won the Asian Cup, we did lose our first game. That was under Ange, it was, yes, correct. And so we do have a bit of a history of starting slow in these games. For me, when I look at the Socceroos play, we are just missing a bit of spark of creativity in the middle of that midfield. I think when we made our substitutions, when the likes of Jordan Boss came on and Riley McGree came on, and we took off Connor Metcalf and Keanu Bacchus. I think that injected a lot of life into our midfield, which we needed. We're missing the Rogic. We're missing the Moy, that really creative midfield player that can link the 2/3 of the top and bottom third of the field. So, you can only beat the opposition that's put in front of you. And in the end, it was a pretty convincing 2-0. I think India came out of the blocks pretty quickly, but the game pretty quickly settled into it. But what you look for in these games is a plan, is, how are we going to do going deeper into the tournament? And I think there's some pretty substantial question marks there for Graham Arnold. I've been on this pod before talking about the World Cup, and I went to the World Cup and it was magnificent, and Australia overperformed, but we overperformed with backs to the walls performances against clearly superior teams. We cannot behave that way in Asia. And I don't mean any discredit to the Asian teams. All I'm saying is this is our hunting ground, all right? This is where we expect to be top of the pile rather than bottom of the pile. So when we're going out with these teams, we need to be authoritative, we need to be aggressive, and we need to go out there to win in a good way. Didn't see much of that in the first game, but it's very early on. I think Graham Arnold probably took a few lessons from the World Cup in that he needs to rotate the squad a bit. Actually, one thing about the Socceroos is we actually have quite good bench strength now. I don't think we've got a first 11 which is noticeably better than our second 11. I think we've got good consistency in our squad, which is great. And Graham Arnold has done a fantastic job in building that over the last 3 or 4 years. So we'll see. Then we've got Syria next, who actually we did play in the qualification path to the World Cup, and we absolutely squeaked a result against them. So we'll see how we go in the next game in a couple of days' time. But yeah.
I agree that the Socceroos, particularly here in the Asian Cup level, they should be pushing forward on the front foot. Is Graham Arnold the right coach for that? I'm not saying fire him or anything like that. You know what I'm talking about, his philosophy. If Ange Postecoglou is at this end of the spectrum, Graham Arnold's a little bit further the other way. Everybody knows he's a specialist when it comes to set pieces.
Yeah.
They spend a lot of time on set pieces. They score a lot of goals at set pieces, which they didn't against India, which was a bit of a surprise.
Yeah.
Is he the man to do the things that you say the Socceroos must do? Which I agree with, by the way.
I do think Australia's style of play has improved over time, over the last few years. It's funny mentioning Graham Arnold, and we talked about Ange Postecoglou on the previous podcast. So they were like the frenemies of the A-League.
They were.
So when Ange was coming up through the A-League, Graham Arnold was doing great things with the Central Coast Mariners, and then Ange went to the national team role, and Graham Arnold sort of followed him into that role as well. So me being a big Bruce and Raw fan, it's taken me a long time to warm up to Graham Arnold because he's always been the rival coach. I have to say I am definitely coming around to him. I don't think Australia really has the cattle to play like the Japanese play. I was going to say to play like the South Koreans play, but I wasn't overly impressed with watching them yesterday. I don't think they were great. I actually think they were quite a bit like Australia in the way that they played. And some of these really highly technical teams that will come up against, like the Southeast Asian teams. Vietnam were super impressive against Japan. The Saudis, we'll see how we go. So I don't want to doubt Graham Arnold. I think he's got runs on the board, but this tournament is a big proving ground for him.
And that's just it, Keong, isn't it? We shouldn't get too carried away. You know, Japan, they had a scare. Socceroos were a bit, but they got through. It was the first game. And I've just watched this Captains of the World on Netflix, which I thoroughly recommend. It's absolutely superb. And watching it again, I forgot that Argentina lost their first game, Saudi Arabia, right? So we shouldn't get too carried away with Socceroos and Japan. I actually think Japan will be fine. You know, Minamino will score their goals. He did okay. You got Nakamura in there. I think that the cream will rise to the top. I'm not too concerned about either Japan or Socceroos progressing. Are you?
Yeah, I think that they'll be fine for the group stages. I think things will be really interesting when it comes to the knockout. For me, I'm more concerned about the Southeast Asian teams that were in it. Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, and Vietnam. Thailand haven't played yet when we were recording this podcast, but I think Vietnam did themselves justice. I think they took the lead against Japan, gave Japan a bit of a scare, but Japan recovered pretty quickly, and there are glimpses of how, and Vietnam were actually injury hit with a lot of injuries, and the second string national team actually played very well. But I was a bit disappointed with Malaysia. We had talked about it last podcast, saying that they could be one of the dark horses. But against Jordan, they lost 4-0, which is quite a. I think they were nervous. I think they were nervous. It's their first Asian Cup since 2007. I think they were the first game and all the nerves. Jordan scored they scored a great opening goal, and then after that there was just confusion all around, and they just ran off with the goals. So it was a bit disappointing. That we got a Malaysian freelance football writer right now for Yahoo, and then he said that this is the biggest back end squad that the Football Association of Malaysia has ever assembled. 7 technical and 13 non-technical staff all followed the team all to Qatar to prepare for this. So it was really it was quite a poor start for Malaysia.
Quite a big travelling support as well. Quite a few travelling fans.
Absolutely.
Well, it's very interesting. Okay, let's do this week to week and see if we stick with our predictions. Based on the first week of the Asian Cup, what's your prediction for the tournament winner now? Are you sticking with your first?
I'm sticking with Japan, man. I think they look...
I do think Australia is strong enough to make it to the final. If they don't meet each other before then, I think it'll be Australia-Japan final.
Oh, that'll be great.
Australia winning 2-1.
All right. I've got to stick with the Koreans. I'm going to stick with the Koreans for my boy, Son Heung-min. As always, let us know what you think. Send us your comments underneath. Now, we're going to wrap this up with my favourite story.
It's interesting.
Albirex Niigata. As you know, they're going to go entirely local next season. Going to be on the same local terms, if you like, as all the other teams in the Singapore Premier League, and they're debating their name change.
Yeah, it's now called Albirex Niigata (Singapore) because their feeder club from the Japanese team. So they've been thinking about because they and full credit to them, they've been stationed at Jurong East ever since they they are in Singapore, and they've built a very strong grassroots community of supporters at Jurong East. So it seems very natural that once they turn like fully local, they should adopt a sort of like a name change, sort of like just to represent them at Jurong East. And I couldn't like Albirex Niigata Jurong. I think that would be a great name change. But people are saying just take Albirex Jurong, which takes out the Niigata. That can be another option. But
I completely agree. I am 100. I'm passionate about the name thing, right?
Yeah.
Identity building. For me, this is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
It has to be Albirex Jurong. You're trying to develop grassroots. Brisbane playing Brisbane, they're called Brisbane. Hougang United, Hougang Stadium, Hougang MRT, Hougang. Subconsciously, you've got to build that subliminal connection to your grassroots community. Manchester playing Manchester, Liverpool playing Liverpool, Madrid in Madrid. You've got to build that grassroots connection. They've done a wonderful job in the community of Jurong. Absolute no-brainer. Albirex Jurong. Get it done. Change the name now. What do you think?
The hardest thing for a football club to do is to establish close ties to the local community.
Exactly.
If they've done that through just being there over recent years, and now the opportunity is to deepen those ties through a name change, which is not a trivial thing. It's symbolic.
No, of course it
absolutely
is.
symbolic, and it gives people in the local area a source of pride and attachment. 100% aligned with you, mate, on that one. I think they need to acknowledge the community that supported them and represent them in the SPL as such.
Right. I agree completely. And look, if you don't like Albirex Jurong, become Albirex Sengkang and come out where I'm living, because we'll have you. We've got a new stadium coming in
got any
Pongal.
other suggestions other than ours?
Yeah.
Let us know.
What do you think? Albirex Jurong, what should we be calling them? Send all of your comments to
Yahoo Southeast Asia on YouTube, Yahoo SG, Yahoo_MY on Twitter, Yahoo SEA on TikTok.
Brilliant. Matt, as always, an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me again.
Good luck for Australia.
Yeah, come on, Ruse. Come on. Let's do it.
And thank you, as always, for supporting this globally award-nominated podcast.
Yes.
One
Vote
more
for
time.
us. Vote
Give
for us,
us a
yeah.
vote. Give us a vote. Keep watching the Asian Cup and keep watching us. And we'll see you right here next week. Take care.
Take care.